It wasn't just a coat. It was a curse, sewn in blood. Hey Storystream fam. Welcome back. If you thought a coat couldn't carry a curse, think again. In part 1, we brushed the edge of something stitched deep into the past. But now, we're pulling at the real thread. This is the second chapter of The Threaded Truth, where haunted fabric, generational secrets, and something far older come to claim what it's owed. Hit that like, smash subscribe, and don't blink, because once this starts unraveling, it doesn't stop. Threaded Truth. Part 2. The Threads Beneath. I don't remember how I got home. One moment, I was facing a cracked mirror in the tailor's back room, my reflection smiling back at me with unfamiliar eyes. And the next, I was sitting on the edge of my bed, the morning sun trying to burn its way through drawn curtains. My hands still trembled, though they were empty now. No coat, no thread, just sweat cooling across my palms and a cold draft crawling down my neck. Had it all been a dream? A hallucination? But when I reached up to run my fingers through my hair, I winced. A small cut ran behind my ear. Thin, precise, like someone had pricked me with a needle while I slept. I stumbled to the mirror in my hallway. My reflection looked like me again. Pale, sure. Wide-eyed. But my eyes weren't wrong anymore. They weren't. Someone else's. Still, I lifted my shirt and examined my torso in the mirror, half expecting stitches. The skin was smooth. No scars. No signs of being threaded, whatever that meant. But the whisper from the mirror echoed in my ears even now. What was taken can always be returned. Taken. What had been taken? And by whom? I pulled on a hoodie and jeans and rushed to the tailor's shop. I had to see it in the daylight. Maybe things would make more sense. Maybe I'd find a coat with a perfectly mundane explanation, a tag I'd missed, an address for a manufacturer, something tangible. But when I turned the corner onto Mayfield Street, I stopped cold. The tailor's shop was gone. The whole storefront was boarded up. Graffiti scrawled across the plywood. A faded sign in the window said, "Condemned, unsafe structure." And behind it, the glass was caked in dust. Layers of it. As though no one had stepped foot inside in years. I approached, pressed my hand to the wood, peered through a crack. The racks were empty. No suits. No bolts of fabric. No mirror. No tailor. Just cobwebs and rot and a silence that pressed into the street like it was trying to erase sound itself. I stumbled back. Had I hallucinated the whole thing? I needed answers. Something to ground me. And one name kept resurfacing in my mind. Sarah Eddings. My mother. She died when I was 8. I'd spent years filing her memory away into little boxes. Her laugh, her perfume, the bedtime stories she made up on the fly. I never questioned her death. Why would I? The police said her brakes failed. Tragic, but clean. Except, now I wasn't so sure. The paper from the tailor's desk had mentioned her. Twice. Thread severed prematurely. Artifact unstable. What did that even mean? I headed for the basement. That was where I kept the old boxes, family photo albums, junk we never unpacked after the move, and the bin labeled, Mom. I hadn't looked through it in years. I pried the lid off and started digging. Photos first. A younger version of her holding me as a toddler, both of us wrapped in a too big parka. A blurry snapshot of her sewing something at the kitchen table. Needles and threads spread around like a shrine. Then, at the bottom, her journal. Brown leather. Worn soft with use. The strap had dried and cracked over time. I opened it gently. Most of it was what I expected. Lists, scribbled thoughts, half-finished poems. But then, about halfway through, I found a series of entries that stopped me cold. January 12th. I had the dream again. The hallway of mirrors. Only this time I wasn't alone. He was there, wearing the coat. Not mine. His. But it knew me. January 18th. They said the artifact was safe. That it had been restitched. But I don't trust them. Every time I wear it, I feel less. Like a thread of me unravels each day. But it's in my blood. It was passed to me, and now, if I don't pass it on, it'll take everything. February 3rd. I won't give it to her. She's too young. Too full of light. If it wants a host, it can have me. But I'll lock it away. Sew it in silence. And when I'm gone, maybe it'll stay gone. My breath caught in my throat. She was talking about the coat. My coat. The one I thought I just stumbled into by accident. I flipped the page, and one final entry stared back at me. If someone finds this, know that the needle is never idle, and the thread always finds a way. There was no signature, but pressed between the pages was a tiny scrap of dark fabric. I held it up to the light. It was the same material as my coat. Same shimmer. Same weight. And when I looked close, I saw it. The embroidery again. That needle. That thread. That open eye. I felt cold all over. Whatever this thing was. It hadn't ended with my mother. It had just waited. Hidden. And now, for reasons I still didn't understand, it had chosen me. But I wasn't going to let it take me without a fight. I closed the journal and held the fabric tight in my hand. If my mom could fight it, so could I. I just had to figure out how. It's strange how the quietest things can make the loudest noise. That little piece of fabric from Mom's journal. I couldn't stop hearing it. Not literally, of course. But it echoed in my thoughts like a heartbeat, threading its way into everything I tried to think about. Every mundane object in my apartment suddenly looked suspect. The cracks in the ceiling, the weave of my bed sheets, the ticking of the old sewing machine I'd kept for sentimental reasons. All of it pulsed with an invisible pattern. Something had been passed down. Something more than just genes and memories. The coat hadn't just chosen me. It had waited for me. I sat cross-legged on the living room floor with the journal open, a legal pad beside me, and my mother's handwriting staring back at me like it had only been written yesterday. I copied every name, phrase, and date I could find, piecing together breadcrumbs that didn't yet form a trail. Hallway of mirrors. Artifact. Restitched. He was there, wearing the coat. The needle is never idle. There was something ritualistic about the way she wrote. Like she was both warning herself and preserving something for me. Or whoever came after. I flipped through the journal again. One passage jumped out at me that I'd missed before, tucked in the corner of an entry from February 10th. Find Maria. She remembers the workshop. She'll know if it's waking up again. Maria. No last name. No location. Just Maria. I didn't know who she was, but the way my mom wrote her name, like it was sacred, like it belonged to someone who mattered, it felt important. I grabbed my laptop and started searching. Maria plus workshop plus tailoring plus Eddings. Nothing promising. Then I tried something simpler. Maria plus Sarah Eddings plus Chicago. One result. An obituary. 5 years old. Maria Valencia, age 78, former textile artist and owner of Thread and Needle, passed away quietly at home. Survived by her daughter, Estella. Bingo. I dug deeper. Estella had kept the shop alive after her mother passed. It was still running, located in a quieter part of town I hadn't been to in years. I grabbed my coat, journal, and the scrap of fabric. If anyone could explain what the hell restitched meant, it was probably someone who grew up under Maria Valencia's roof. The train ride was a blur. Grey city buildings flicking past like ghostly dominoes. I kept feeling the lining of my coat between my fingers, my thumb tracing the exact spot where I'd first found the message. The needle symbol was gone now, or hidden, but the weight of it still clung to the cloth like memory. When I stepped off at Parkview Station, the neighborhood felt older, still lived in, but with the sort of wear that no amount of restoration could hide. It smelled like laundry detergent and soil, with a hint of old firewood. The shop sat between a bakery and a boarded-up antique store. Its sign, painted in swirling, hand-lettered script, red thread and needle. Custom work since 1957. The front window was filled with mannequins wearing half-finished suits, ball gowns, and vintage coats with dramatic collars. A wooden needle, carved by hand, hung above the doorframe. I stepped inside. The shop smelled like cedar and mothballs, with a faint trace of lavender. Fabric bolts lined the walls in organized chaos. Pins stuck out of pincushions shaped like strawberries. A pair of golden scissors glinted on the counter like something ceremonial. A woman in her 40s emerged from the back, wiping her hands on a patchwork apron. "You looking for alterations or inheritance?" she asked flatly. I blinked. "Excuse me." Her eyes locked onto mine, sharp, almond-shaped, and not unkind. She looked me over, and then down at the journal clutched in my hands. "You're Sarah's daughter." It wasn't a question. "Yes," I said. "How did you?" "I saw that coat before you walked in." She gave a humorless smile. "Some threads don't die. They just find new wearers." I took a cautious step forward. "You knew my mother?" She nodded. "Knew her well. She and my mother stitched the lining of your coat by hand. I was there. I watched. I wasn't supposed to, but you know how kids are. I pulled the journal from my bag and laid it on the counter. She mentioned Maria. Said she might know if it was waking up again. Estella opened the journal like she'd been waiting years to do it. She didn't read the pages. She remembered them, nodding as she flipped through, her fingers reverent. "You don't understand what you're wearing, do you?" she said finally. I shook my head. Not even a little. She looked at me for a long moment, then motioned toward the back. "Come with me. I'll show you." I followed her down a hallway past rolls of velvet and aged photographs. One was of my mother and Estella's, smiling, holding the very coat I now wore between them like it was some ceremonial offering. In the back room, under a sheet, was a mannequin. On it sat a coat that looked like mine, but older, faded, frayed, and patched in places with silver thread. "This was the prototype," Estella said. "The first threaded coat. Your mother wore this for years before she realized it was feeding off her memories. The new one, the one you're wearing, is meant to contain it. Bind the needle, trap it in a weave of intent. But those binds weaken with time, or with trauma." "Wait." I swallowed. "You're saying my coat is alive?" "Not alive, but inhabited. Every stitch holds a whisper. Every wearer leaves an echo. The problem is, sometimes those echoes want a voice again." I touched the sleeve of my coat, suddenly afraid it might move. Estella leaned closer. "Your mother made a choice. She thought you might be strong enough. But you need to decide now. Keep wearing it, or burn it before it remembers what it was." I stared at the mannequin, at the coat's twin. What if it already remembered? I didn't sleep that night. Even after I left Estella's shop and rode the train home in a daze, the things she told me hung around like threads stuck to my skin. Every sound in my apartment made me twitch. Creaking floorboards, the hum of the radiator, the soft rustle of fabric as I took off the coat and hung it, reluctantly, on the back of my bedroom door. It didn't feel like I was just taking off a garment. It felt like I was closing the door on something watching me. Estella had warned me that the coat didn't forget, that it carried echoes of those who had worn it before, especially those who had sewn it. "Intent," she had said, "is what seals the memory in place." Your mother was careful, but even the strongest seems weaken if you keep wearing them. I didn't know what to believe. Was it really possible that a coat, fabric and lining and buttons, could carry something as intangible as memory? The answer, I was beginning to realize, was yes. The next morning, I woke to find the coat no longer on the door. For one breathless second, I thought I had imagined it all. Then I saw it, folded neatly at the foot of my bed. I hadn't moved it. I hadn't even touched it since I'd returned home. And yet, here it was, laid out like a gift. Or a warning. The hairs on my arms rose. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't even want to be in the same room as it. But something about the coat, its presence, the weight of it, drew me back. Just like it had the day I first saw it in that dusty consignment shop window. There was a pull. A compulsion. I unfolded it slowly, warily, expecting something to leap out. But it was just fabric. Just lining. Just thread. And yet, I reached into the inner pocket again. No message this time. But the seam felt different. Like it had been opened and restitched recently. The threads weren't identical to the ones Estella had shown me. These were darker, thicker, and almost shimmered under the light like fish scales. I ran my finger over them and something sharp pricked me. I yanked my hand back, a bead of blood forming on the tip of my index finger. "Damn it," I muttered, rushing to the bathroom for a tissue. But even as I cleaned the cut, I couldn't shake the thought. Was it just a stray needle left behind? Or something deliberate? Back in the bedroom, I stared at the coat. I should have burned it. I should have. But instead, I found myself putting it on again. My arms slipping into the sleeves as if guided by muscle memory I didn't have. It fit like a second skin. And then the mirror across from my bed fogged. I hadn't showered. There was no steam. No temperature shift. But the surface misted over, slowly, like breath from an invisible mouth. My breath caught in my throat. And then, letters began to appear, drawn into the condensation by a finger that wasn't mine. She saw. We warned her. My heart hammered in my chest. I backed away slowly, unwilling to turn my back on the glass, as though something might crawl out of it. When I turned to the hallway mirror, it was fogged too. A single word had appeared there. Echo. I ripped the coat off, throwing it to the floor like it had bitten me. The lining shifted slightly as it landed, and I caught the briefest glimpse of something underneath. Faint embroidery, hidden under the primary stitchwork. I grabbed my sewing kit, pulled out a seam ripper, and dropped to my knees. I worked slowly, carefully, unraveling the edge of the inner lining where I'd felt the prick. It took nearly half an hour to loosen the false seam. Beneath it, stitched in dark red thread, almost black, was a name. Lena Eddings. 1952. My grandmother. A name I hadn't heard spoken aloud since childhood. She died before I was born, or so I'd been told. Why was her name sewn into the lining of the coat? I dug back into Mom's journal, flipping through until I found an entry dated simply, anniversary. The handwriting here was more chaotic, the pen pressing harder into the page as though written in a rush. She wore it first. She made the lining. Said it was to keep the past close. But she never told me what she locked away inside it. I was too young to understand. I put it on anyway. That was my sin. Now it wants out. It wants her back, or it wants a replacement. My breath caught. A replacement. That word clung to me, wrapping around my ribs. I looked back at the coat, its innocent shape slumped on the floor like a shed skin. The needle hadn't been idle. That night, I dreamt of a hallway lined with mirrors, stretching in both directions, endlessly. In each reflection, a different version of me wore the coat. Some smiled. Some wept. One bled from her eyes. Another burned silently, smoke curling out from her sleeves. At the far end of the hallway stood a woman I didn't recognize at first, until she turned. Lena. My grandmother. She wore the original coat, the one Estella had shown me on the mannequin, but it shimmered with red light, like it had been stitched from veins and sinew. She lifted a needle the length of her forearm, and spoke. You were never supposed to wear it. I woke up gasping. The coat was gone. I tore my apartment apart. Drawers. Closet. Under the bed. The hallway. I even checked the laundry basket, though I hadn't worn anything but the coat the day before. But it was gone. The coat was just missing. It didn't make sense. I had dropped it on the floor last night, disgusted and terrified after discovering my grandmother's name sewn inside. I'd stared at it, even contemplated burning it, but exhaustion overtook my fear. I never opened the front door, never took out the trash, never left the apartment. And yet, when I woke, it wasn't there. Part of me wanted to believe it had been stolen, that someone had broken in and taken it. But there was no sign of forced entry. No missing items. My wallet, laptop, and jewelry were all untouched. Just the coat. Vanished like smoke. I didn't report it. What would I even say? Hi, yes, I'd like to file a report for a missing garment that may or may not be haunted by my dead grandmother and connected to cryptic messages about my mother's sins. No thanks. Instead, I did the only thing that made sense to me. I went to the last place my mother had written about before her notes became fragmented and strange. Prospect Point Cemetery. I didn't have a plan. But something about that journal entry stuck with me. She wore it first. She made the lining. I needed to know if Lena Eddings had really made the coat. And if she had, maybe she left something behind. Some clue. Some record. The cemetery sat on the edge of town, nestled against a wooded slope. I hadn't been here since Mom's funeral, and even then I barely remembered it. She had wanted to be cremated, her ashes scattered into Lake Camden. No headstone. No plaque. Just water and air. But Lena's name was listed in the cemetery records. I checked before I left. Plot 8B, row 5. Supposedly died in 1982, just months before I was born. Only, when I reached the headstone, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't weathered. It wasn't even dusty. The granite gleamed like it had just been cleaned, and the flowers lying beside it were fresh. Yellow lilies. A few days old at most. Someone had been here. I crouched beside the grave and ran my fingers over the engraved name. Lena Eddings. Beloved mother. 1923 to 1982. Then I noticed something strange. A faint groove in the grass behind the headstone. Freshly turned soil. As if someone had recently disturbed it. I glanced around the cemetery. It was empty, rows of crooked stones stretching in quiet silence, the trees whispering in the wind. No signs of digging equipment. No caretaker. Just me. And the flowers. I touched one of the lily stems. A small ribbon had been tied around it. Dark red silk. I recognized the color instantly. It matched the thread in the coat. My stomach twisted. I stood quickly, scanning the area again. No sign of life. but I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. My skin prickled. I backed away slowly, not turning my back on the headstone until I was several yards away. That's when I saw her. At the far end of the cemetery, a figure stood still as a statue between two willows. She wore a long black coat, my coat, and a scarf that fluttered in the breeze like it had a mind of its own. I blinked, and she was gone. Like she'd never been there at all. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to Estella's shop. I didn't call ahead. Just marched through the front door, breath fogging the glass behind me. Bells jingled overhead. Estella looked up from behind the counter, startled. She wore no makeup today, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun. She looked tired, worn. "You saw her," she said before I even spoke. "I think so," I whispered. She had the coat. Estella's lips pressed together. "It's begun." "What's begun? What does she want from me?" She motioned me to the back, pulling the curtain aside with a trembling hand. We sat in the fitting room, surrounded by fabric swatches and antique mirrors. She pulled out a faded scrapbook and placed it in my lap. "This belonged to your grandmother," she said. "I kept it after your mother left." I opened the book and flipped through pages of designs. Coats, cloaks, capes, all with similar flourishes. Hidden pockets. Subtle embroidery. Each with dates, names, and strange phrases scribbled in the margins. On the last page was a sketch of the coat. The one I had bought. The one that had vanished. Underneath the drawing were 3 words, written in Lena's sharp cursive. Contain. Conceal. Consume. Estella touched the page. "Your grandmother didn't just make clothes. She made vessels. Each piece she sewed was designed to hold something. Emotion, memory, sometimes, even people." People. My voice cracked. She was part of a tradition, long buried. Not witches, exactly. Seamstresses of the spirit. Your mother tried to break away from it, but the legacy clings. That coat was supposed to trap what Lena couldn't destroy. But now it's free. I shivered. "And it wants me." Estella nodded slowly. "Not you. Your line." A mirror behind her flickered. For a moment, I saw my own face, then another layered behind it. A woman with hollow eyes, burnt lips. Then it was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I curled up on Estella's faded velvet couch, wrapped in a crocheted blanket that smelled like old lavender and cedarwood. Outside, the wind battered the windows, carrying with it something I didn't dare name. Not just weather, something older, hungrier. At some point, I must have dozed, because I awoke to the smell of tea and the soft shuffle of slippers. Estella had made breakfast. The kettle hissed. Toast popped. She moved about her kitchen like it was any other morning. But her face was different. Pinched. Pale. She had dreamed too, I could tell. We just didn't talk about it yet. "You said the coat was a vessel," I said finally, wrapping my hands around the mug she gave me. "But a vessel for what, exactly?" She stirred honey into her tea, thinking. "Anger. Regret. Pain. Your grandmother believed emotions, if strong enough, could be stitched into the fabric of the world. That if you wove them tightly enough, they'd survive death. She experimented. With people." Estella nodded. "At first it was symbolic. Memory quilts, mourning shawls, that kind of thing. But Lena took it further. She believed she could capture what lingered after death. Hold it, contain it, keep the grief from spreading. But she underestimated what she was sewing shut. I thought of the red thread message sewn into the lining of the coat. She wore it first. She made the lining. She trapped something in the coat, didn't she?" Estella hesitated, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a key. "There's something I've been keeping from you. It's time you saw it." The key opened a hidden door in the back of the shop. Not a basement, but a narrow stairwell that led to a storage room thick with dust and forgotten things. Trunks stacked 3 high. Shelves of yellowed pattern books. Mannequins without heads. And in the center, covered in a moth-eaten sheet, stood a dressmaker's form. When Estella pulled the sheet away, I nearly dropped the lantern. It was another coat. Similar in shape to mine, but older, duller. The fabric was almost black, faded with time, with embroidery at the hem that looked like it had once been gold. A long seam down the back had been carefully restitched, clumsy and uneven, like someone had tried to keep something from bursting out. Estella ran her fingers down the coat's sleeve. This was Lena's final creation before she died. The prototype. I stepped closer. A chill pressed against my chest as I studied the lining. There were no messages inside this one, not in words, but a symbol had been embroidered over the heart. A triangle with a loop at the top, cradled in a circle. "What is that?" I asked. "The stitchmaker's seal," Estella said softly. "A mark only a few used." It meant this piece wasn't just functional, it was a binding. I swallowed. "Binding what?" "Lena had a sister," Estella said. "Her name was Marin. She died young. Or that's what everyone believed. But Lena told me something else before she passed. She said Marin wasn't dead. Not exactly. She said she lived on, inside this." Estella touched the coat again, her eyes far away. "She tried to save her. Thought she could preserve what was left. But it turned dark. Marin's spirit, if that's what you want to call it, grew twisted, bitter. It fed on Lena's guilt. She sealed it inside this coat. Then tried again with the one you bought." "But I never knew any of this," I whispered. "My mother never told me." "Why?" "She wanted to protect you. She thought if she destroyed all the remnants of Lena's work, she could stop the curse. But something always remains. And now it's unbound." My chest tightened. "That woman I saw at the cemetery. She's not just a ghost," Estella said. "She's what's left of Marin. Or the thing wearing her shape." I stepped back from the coat, heart hammering. "Why me? Why now?" "Because you're the last of the line. And the coats don't just carry spirits. They call to them. They seek a wearer, someone to finish what was started." A noise from above froze us both. Thump. Then again. Heavy. Deliberate. Someone was in the shop. Estella motioned to the lantern. "Stay here." She climbed the stairs quickly, leaving me alone with the coat. The silence grew thicker, humming, like the room had a heartbeat. I turned to leave, and something tugged my sleeve. I spun. Nothing there. But the coat's right arm now hung forward slightly, reaching. The air grew cold. I backed away, stumbling into one of the mannequins. It tipped, crashed, rolled against the trunk. And then I heard Estella scream. I bolted up the stairs 2 at a time. The front of the shop was in chaos. Overturned chairs, shattered glass, spilled bolts of fabric like bleeding rainbows across the floor. Estella was gone. The door stood wide open. But the strangest thing of all? The missing coat, my coat, lay draped across the front counter, like it had come home. The coat shouldn't have been there. It had vanished days ago, along with the stranger in the graveyard. I'd searched for it, obsessed over it, half believing I'd imagined it in the first place. But now it lay sprawled across Estella's counter, the lining exposed like an open wound. And Estella was gone. I scanned the room, heart pounding. The door to the street stood wide open, the little bell above it broken in half, as if someone had ripped through it without care. Shards of glass glinted on the floor like jagged stars. Outside, the sky had turned gunmetal gray, clouds thick and low. No footprints. No voice calling for help. Just me. And the coat. I should have left. Called someone. Screamed. But something in me was drawn forward, like I had no choice. I reached out and touched the sleeve. Cold. Too cold for fabric that had been inside a warm room. It was damp too, not with water. Something darker. Thicker. There, just beneath the lapel, a new line of red thread had appeared. Not embroidered this time. Sewn in a rush. Sloppy. Like bleeding handwriting. "Do you see her now?" The words burned into my vision. I blinked, looked away, and when I looked back, they were gone. My breath caught. Estella had said Marin's presence grew stronger the more it was acknowledged. That speaking her name, reading her words, pulling her into thought, it all gave her power. I picked up the coat and shoved it inside a storage bin, slamming the lid closed with a sharp crack. The sound echoed through the shop like a gunshot. Then silence. Until something knocked from inside the bin. Once. Twice. 3 slow knocks. I backed away. No. No. I turned, nearly tripping over the fallen fabric bolts, and stumbled into Estella's workshop in the back. Everything was untouched, her shears on the counter, the iron cooling on its stand. A note lay on the cutting table. My name on the envelope, scrawled in hasty ink. I opened it with shaking fingers. "If you're reading this, I didn't make it back. You need to finish what Lena started, but not the way she meant. Burn the coat. And whatever you do, don't let her wear it. She's close now. Too close. No signature. Just a smear of ink trailing off the page, like she'd been pulled away mid-sentence. I sat down hard on the stool, the weight of everything pressing down. Why now? Why had the coat come back? Why leave Estella's note behind like some cruel breadcrumb? Was she still alive? Or was this a trap to draw me in deeper? I didn't want to be part of this. I didn't want to believe my family had created something that could contain a soul, or a curse. But the facts were screaming. And then I heard it. Footsteps above. Not in the apartment upstairs. In the attic. I had never been in the attic. Estella always kept the door locked, even from herself, claiming it was full of old junk and dead air. But now I heard movement. Slow, deliberate pacing. The floorboards creaked like bones groaning under pressure. I crept to the back hallway, past the sewing room, and found the narrow attic stairs. The door at the top was open. Just a crack. The light was off, but a faint red glow pulsed from behind the doorframe, like embers dancing under skin. I climbed the steps, one at a time, heart trying to escape my ribs. At the top, I paused, held my breath, pushed. The door swung inward with a soft whine. Inside, the attic was small, not the endless crawl space I'd imagined. Just one window, a single wooden chest, and a woman, standing in the center of the room. Back to me. She wore my coat. Her hair was long, black, and matted. Her shoulders jutted out at sharp angles, too thin, too still. The coat seemed to ripple around her like it wasn't quite touching her body, but suspended just off the skin. She turned slowly. Her face was wrong. Not monstrous, not deformed, just empty. Her features were too symmetrical, too smooth, like someone had carved a face from memory, not reality. She smiled, and I saw my own eyes looking back at me. "I knew you'd come," she whispered. Her voice was 100 voices. Mine, Lena's, Estella's, and someone else's I didn't recognize. Childlike and cold. "Where's Estella?" I managed. "She showed me the door," the woman said. So I walked through. I took a step back. The woman took one forward. "Do you remember, Amelia?" she asked. My name, spoken with weight. History. "I'm not her," I said. Her head tilted. "Not yet." She lifted her arm and reached into the coat's lining. From it, she pulled a needle, long, silver, glinting red at the tip. With her other hand, she motioned to the chest at the center of the room. "Open it," she said. I shook my head. She didn't speak again, just stepped aside. I should have run. Should have bolted and never looked back. But I was too far gone for that now. I walked to the chest, crouched, and slowly unlatched the lock. Inside lay a bundle of fabric. No, not fabric. Hair. Human hair, dark and coarse, braided into a long coil and wrapped around something. I reached in, hesitating only a second, and unwrapped it. A photograph. A girl, maybe 15, standing next to Lena. The girl wore my coat. She had my face, and her eyes had been scratched out. As I stared, the door slammed shut behind me. The last thing I heard was the sound of thread being pulled taut. And that's it, the final stitch in the threaded truth. If you're still breathing and still questioning what just happened, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell. There's more darkness waiting in the seams of what's next. Got chills? Got theories? Drop them in the comments. We're watching. And if you want bonus content in a shorter form like Reels, please give us a follow on Instagram at Storystream. Thanks for joining us. Just remember, all things worn remember where they've been. Especially the ones that never really leave you.